What if God chose you to play a role as powerful and significant as the characters in Avatar? What if you were chosen to fight for something greater, to protect the Earth, and to stand for truth just like the heroes in the movie in Avatar? The Na'vi are chosen to defend their world, to protect Pandora from destruction, and to safeguard the sacred balance of nature. But just like them, you too have been chosen by God for something much greater than you might realize. God has a divine purpose for your life, one that transcends the ordinary and calls you to be a force for good in this world. The characters in Avatar are not just randomly selected for their roles. They are handpicked to fulfill a destiny much bigger than their individual lives. Similarly, you are not here by accident. Just as Jake Sully and Neytiri were called to protect their world, God has a unique calling on your life, a purpose that may look different from what you expect, but one that is equally important. You may not be called to fight in a jungle or protect a planet, but you are called to stand for truth, to make a difference, and to carry out God's purpose in your own way. In this life, you are not just a random character. You are a chosen one selected by God for a higher purpose. Just as the characters in Avatar were chosen to protect their world, your life is part of a much bigger divine plan. You are here not by chance, but by God's design. Your story is unfolding, and you are meant to make an impact. Just as the heroes of Avatar left a legacy of change, so too can you leave a mark on this world. God didn't choose you to live a life of mediocrity. He chose you to be part of something bigger, something that changes the world around you. The concept of being chosen is not just an abstract theological idea. It is a deep truth woven into the fabric of our existence. The Bible is filled with stories of individuals who were handpicked by God to fulfill a purpose far beyond what they could have imagined for themselves. Just like those characters in Avatar, people chosen to fight for something far greater than themselves, you too have been selected for a divine calling. In Avatar, we meet Jake Sully, an ordinary man who, after a series of events, is thrust into the heart of an extraordinary world. Initially, he has no special skills or background that would make him an obvious hero. However, through his connection with the Na'vi, the indigenous people of Pandora, Jake becomes one of them, and through that transformation, he's chosen to protect their world. This might seem like fantasy, but the narrative mirrors an ancient truth. God chooses unlikely individuals for his divine purposes. Similarly, Neytiri, a fierce and wise Na'vi warrior, was chosen from birth to be the protector of her people. She does not choose her calling, it chooses her. She carries the weight of her people's survival on her shoulders, and her journey mirrors that of many biblical figures, those who were chosen by God even before they fully understood their purpose. Neytiri's connection to the land, her knowledge of the spiritual forces surrounding her, and her bravery in the face of overwhelming odds reflect a higher calling. She was set apart from the moment she was born for a purpose much greater than herself, and she embraces it with courage and wisdom. This concept of being chosen is deeply embedded in the Bible. Think of Esther, a young Jewish woman who found herself as the Queen of Persia. She didn't seek out the throne, yet God placed her there for a divine purpose to save her people. Esther's story is a testament to how God's purpose for our lives often unfolds in unexpected ways. Just like the characters in Avatar, Esther was part of a much bigger story, one that she couldn't have predicted, but that was full of divine destiny. Her response to being chosen was not to run away from it, but to rise to the occasion, knowing that God had placed her in this position for such a time as this. Esther 4:14. The same can be said about the Apostle Paul, who was chosen by God to spread the message of Christ. Paul's life was transformed radically. He went from a persecutor of Christians to one of the most influential apostles in history. He didn't choose his calling. God chose him. And his response to that calling was obedience. Like Jake Sully, who initially felt out of place in the world of the Na'vi, Paul felt unworthy of the calling placed upon him. However, he understood that it was not about his qualifications, but about God's purpose. And that purpose was far beyond anything he could have imagined. Paul's life was part of a greater divine plan, just as your life is a piece of the beautiful unfolding story that God is telling. In the same way you are chosen. It may not always feel like it, and at times you might even question why God would choose you for such a big purpose, especially when it feels daunting or unclear. Just like Jake Sully, you may initially feel out of place, uncertain about your role, or even unworthy of the mission before you. However, God has handpicked you for a divine purpose that is bigger than anything you could ever create on your own. Your story is not an accident. It is intricately woven into the greater narrative that God is unfolding for His kingdom. Recognizing your divine calling is not always easy. It's often difficult to see the bigger picture, especially when we're caught up in the struggles of daily life. Sometimes it feels like everyone else has it figured out while you're left questioning your place in the world. But even when it seems hard to understand, or when you feel unworthy, remember this: God's calling on your life is unique to you. Just like Neytiri and Jake, you may not fully understand your purpose at first, but through faith, obedience, and trust in God, you will come to realize that His plan for you is far greater than anything you could have imagined. In Avatar, Jake Sully had to undergo a transformation to understand his true purpose. He was thrust into a world he didn't fully understand, but through that journey, he was chosen to lead and protect. Similarly, God often calls us out of our comfort zones, asking us to trust Him, even when the path seems unclear. Just as Jake and Neytiri were chosen for a purpose that required them to rise above their own limitations, God calls us to rise above the challenges we face. The journey may be difficult, and the calling may seem overwhelming, but in the end, it will lead us to something far greater than we could have imagined. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Have you ever felt like you were chosen for something more, something beyond what you can see or understand right now? Perhaps you've faced hardships or challenges that have left you questioning your purpose. But in those moments, remember that you are not just a random character in a story. You are a chosen one marked by God to fulfill a purpose that only you can accomplish. Your story is part of the greater divine plan that God has set into motion. Just like Jake Sully and Neytiri, you are part of a larger mission. Your life is not insignificant, and your calling is not just about what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's about the eternal impact that God is using you to make. Whether you are called to influence your community, lead in your career, or raise a family, God's purpose for you is significant. It may not always be easy to see, but every step you take in faith brings you closer to understanding the fullness of what He has called you to. In the world of Avatar, the characters had to fight for the survival of their world. They had to rise above the forces that sought to destroy their home, and through that they found their purpose. In the same way, God has chosen you for a battle, not a battle for land or for worldly glory, but for the protection and advancement of His kingdom. Like Jake and Neytiri, your strength will come from the one who has called you, and the obstacles you face will serve as stepping stones to fulfilling your greater purpose. When God calls you, He doesn't promise an easy journey. Just like the chosen ones in Avatar, you will face resistance, misunderstanding, and attacks from the world. The RDA Resources Development Administration in Avatar was determined to exploit Pandora, driven by greed and power. Similarly, the chosen ones in God's kingdom face opposition from forces that are determined to pull them away from their divine calling. It is not a fight against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces that seek to undermine God's purpose. But here's the truth. Opposition is part of the process. It's part of what refines you and prepares you for the greater purpose God has set before you. In Avatar, the Na'vi faced constant resistance as they fought to protect their world from the exploitation of the RDA. The Na'vi were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the very essence of their existence, for their land, their beliefs, and their way of life. Similarly, the chosen ones are called to stand firm against spiritual forces that seek to destroy their calling, derail their purpose, and pull them away from their divine mission. The enemy will use resistance, misunderstandings, and attacks to try to knock the chosen off course. But every attack only serves to strengthen them if they stay grounded in God's power. Just as the characters in Avatar fought to protect Pandora, the Bible is full of examples where God's chosen people faced extreme resistance, but their perseverance through it led to greater victories. Jesus faced betrayal and mockery throughout his ministry, especially from those who did not understand his mission. He was mocked, falsely accused, and ultimately betrayed by one of his closest followers, Judas. Yet despite all the opposition he faced, Jesus stayed focused on his mission to bring salvation to the world. His journey wasn't easy, and the resistance he faced was overwhelming at times, but his commitment to the calling he received from God never wavered. Similarly, David faced intense resistance when King Saul became jealous of him and sought to kill him. David, despite being anointed by God as the future king of Israel, was forced to live as a fugitive, hiding from Saul and facing constant threats. But through this period of hardship, David's character was refined. The very trials he endured prepared him for the kingship he was destined for. His time in the wilderness running from Saul was not a time of abandonment, but a time of preparation. Each attack, each resistance, each obstacle was a stepping stone that shaped him into the leader God had called him to be. Joseph's story provides another example of how opposition and betrayal were used by God to prepare him for greatness. Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, was betrayed by his own brothers who sold him into slavery. He was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison. But through it all, Joseph remained faithful to God. In prison, he interpreted dreams and helped others, and eventually, his gifts were recognized by Pharaoh, leading to his rise as the second most powerful man in Egypt. Joseph's hardships, though painful and unjust, were the very circumstances that God used to position him for his divine purpose to save his family and countless others from famine. These biblical examples teach us a vital lesson. The resistance we face is not a sign that we are on the wrong path, but rather a sign that we are walking the path God has set before us. The challenges, the betrayals, the misunderstandings, and the opposition are all part of the refining process. They are opportunities to build resilience, to deepen faith, and to strengthen our dependence on God's power. The enemy wants you to believe that resistance means you're doing something wrong, but in reality, it often means you're doing something right. The chosen ones are often the ones who face the fiercest opposition because the enemy knows how powerful they can be when they step into their divine calling. The Bible encourages us to stand firm in our faith, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. The resistance we face may feel overwhelming at times, but God's power and protection are present even in our darkest moments. In Exodus 14:14, God promises to fight for his people. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. This verse speaks to the importance of resting in God's power when facing challenges. We are not expected to fight every battle on our own, God fights for us. Our role is to stand firm trust in His timing and remain faithful to the calling He has given us. When the chosen face resistance, it's easy to feel discouraged, to question God's plan, or to wonder if we've misunderstood our calling. But the truth is, God uses these moments to refine us, to teach us perseverance, and to prepare us for the greater purpose He has in store. Resistance is not something to fear, but something to embrace, because it shapes us into the people God needs us to be for His kingdom. It is through trials that we become stronger, more compassionate, and more aligned with His will. In the face of opposition, the chosen ones are called to stand firm in the knowledge that God's purpose for their lives is greater than any obstacle. In Ephesians 6:13, Paul reminds us to put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. The armor of God is what gives us the strength to endure resistance. When we stand firm in our faith, knowing that God is with us, we are able to withstand the attacks of the enemy. Each battle is not a defeat, but a victory in the making. God is using every moment to mold us, shape us, and prepare us for the greater purpose that lies ahead. Even in the resistance, God's power and protection are present. Stand firm in the purpose He has given you, because the divine outcome will unfold in His perfect timing. The obstacles you face are not there to stop you, but to strengthen you. God is with you in the midst of the battle, guiding you, equipping you, and leading you to victory. Just as the characters in Avatar fought to protect their world, you too are called to fight for the greater good, for the purposes of God's kingdom. The resistance you face today is part of the victory you will experience tomorrow. Keep pressing forward, knowing that God has already won the ultimate victory. As you walk through life and face the inevitable obstacles that come with answering God's call, remember that resistance is not a sign of defeat. It's a sign that you are on the right path. God has called you for a divine purpose, and the enemy knows how powerful you will be when you step fully into that calling. Don't shrink back in fear when opposition rises. Instead, stand firm, knowing that God is using these moments to refine you, strengthen you, and prepare you for the incredible purpose He has for your life. You are chosen for a reason, and the journey ahead will be filled with challenges, but it will also be filled with victories. Each challenge you face is an opportunity to witness God's power and faithfulness. Trust in His plan, stand firm in His purpose, and keep walking forward, knowing that with God on your side, no resistance is too great to overcome. Faith and obedience are the key to unlocking your purpose. Just like the characters in Avatar who had to trust the process and obey their calling, you too must walk in faith. Jake Sully, who was chosen to inhabit a Na'vi body, had to trust a process he didn't fully understand and obey the ways of the Na'vi, even when it seemed foreign and unfamiliar. He had to let go of his old identity and step into the unknown, believing that his obedience would ultimately lead to the fulfillment of his purpose. Similarly, God calls us to trust Him even when the path seems uncertain, and to obey His guidance even when it leads us into unfamiliar territory. Obedience to God's guidance is essential for fulfilling your purpose. In Avatar, Jake's decision to embrace the Na'vi way, despite the challenges he faced, ultimately led him to protect Pandora, the world he had come to love. His faith in the Na'vi culture and their mission became the key to saving their world. This echoes the way God calls us to trust His guidance even when we don't have the full picture. Faith is not about having all the answers, but about trusting that God will reveal them in His time. Just as Jake had to trust in the Na'vi's wisdom and align with their purpose, we must align our will with God's and walk in obedience, knowing that He will guide us step by step. Drawing parallels to faith, we see that trusting God is essential even when the path is uncertain or challenging. Faith is often described as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. When we choose to walk by faith, we are choosing to trust God's plan over our own understanding. It is about stepping into the unknown, believing that God has a purpose for our lives, and trusting that He will equip us for the journey ahead. In the Bible, we see numerous examples of people who walked by faith even when the future was unclear. Take Abraham, for example. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, but Abraham didn't know how this would happen. He didn't know where God was leading him, yet he trusted God's guidance and obeyed. Abraham's journey was full of uncertainties, yet through faith and obedience, he became the father of nations, and his descendants were blessed beyond measure. Abraham didn't need to see the whole picture. He just needed to take the first step. This is the essence of faith, trusting God, even when we cannot see the outcome. Moses is another powerful example of someone who trusted God's plan, despite not knowing the details. God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, but Moses had many doubts. He questioned his ability to speak, his qualifications, and his strength. Yet he obeyed God's call, even when the task seemed impossible. His faith in God's guidance was tested, and through his obedience, Moses became the leader who delivered God's people. The Israelites' exodus from Egypt wasn't the result of Moses' strength alone, but of his unwavering faith and obedience to God's call. Moses did not have all the answers, but he trusted that God's plan would unfold as he walked in obedience. The rewards of obedience are powerful. When we obey God's calling, we experience personal transformation. Obedience leads to growth, both spiritually and emotionally. Like Jake in Avatar, who found purpose and strength in his obedience to the Na'vi, our obedience to God's will leads to a transformation of our character. It shapes us into the people God has called us to be, and it helps us become effective instruments for His kingdom. As we walk in obedience, we begin to fulfill the purpose God has set for our lives, and we are able to make a significant impact in the world around us. Furthermore, obedience leads to the fulfillment of God's purpose for our lives. Just as Jake's obedience to the Na'vi's ways led to his success in saving Pandora, our obedience to God's guidance leads to the fulfillment of our divine calling. God's purposes are always good, and when we walk in obedience, we participate in something far greater than ourselves. We become part of God's grand plan, and through our obedience, we play a vital role in advancing His kingdom. This quote perfectly encapsulates the essence of faith and obedience. Just as we don't need to see the entire staircase to begin climbing, we don't need to have every detail of God's plan revealed to us before we take that first step. Faith is trusting that the next step will be illuminated in due time. Our role is to take that step, trusting that God will provide the strength, wisdom, and direction needed as we continue to walk in obedience. As you walk in your purpose, remember that God's chosen are not isolated. Like the Na'vi in Avatar, who fought as one to protect their world, we too must unite with others who share our calling. The Na'vi understood that their strength lay in their unity. When the RDA's forces came to invade Pandora, the Na'vi didn't fight alone. They fought together, united by a common cause to protect their land, their beliefs, and their way of life. This unity gave them the strength to overcome the seemingly insurmountable odds stacked against them. Similarly, we as God's chosen are called to work together to fulfill our divine calling, supporting one another and building each other up along the way. Unity and purpose is essential for fulfilling God's calling on our lives. God never intended for us to walk alone in our journey. While our calling may be unique, we are not meant to carry it out in isolation. Just as the Na'vi fought together, Christians are called to be a united body. The church, the body of Christ, is meant to support each other, share burdens, and grow together. There is strength in numbers, and God's purposes are often fulfilled through the unity of His people. In the Bible, the early church in Acts provides a perfect example of unity in action. The believers in the early church shared everything in common. They supported each other. In times of need, prayed together and worked together to spread the gospel. They were united in their mission, and because of that unity, they were able to make a profound impact on the world around them. The book of Acts shows how unity can empower believers to accomplish great things for God's kingdom. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 tells us, "Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion." This scripture beautifully illustrates the importance of unity. When we walk in unity with other believers, we strengthen each other. We lift each other up when we are weak, and we encourage one another to continue in our divine calling, especially when faced with obstacles. Just as the Na'vi supported each other in battle, we must support each other in the spiritual battle we face every day. The chosen ones are not meant to walk alone. God has placed us in community with others to accomplish His purposes together. While our calling may be personal and unique, it is never meant to be carried out in isolation. We are called to work together, support each other, and grow in unity. Just as the Na'vi found strength in their unity, we too must find strength in the unity of believers. The journey may feel lonely at times, but remember that you are not alone. There are others who share your purpose, who are walking the same path, and who are called to stand with you in faith. Seek out community, find those who will encourage you, and walk together in the calling God has given you. Just as the Na'vi united to protect Pandora, we too are united to fulfill the greater purpose God has placed on our lives. This verse highlights the strength that comes from unity. When we unite with others in the body of Christ, we become stronger, and together we are able to accomplish great things for God's kingdom. Never underestimate the power of unity in fulfilling God's calling. When we work together, we make a far greater impact than we could ever achieve on our own. So don't walk alone. Seek out the support and encouragement of others who share your faith and your mission, and together you will see the fulfillment of God's purpose in your life. When you embrace your calling, you aren't just changing your life, you're changing the world. Just like the Na'vi, who fought to protect and preserve their beloved Pandora, your obedience to God's calling can create ripples of change that extend far beyond your own life. It's a profound truth that when God calls someone to a specific purpose, He doesn't just intend to impact that one person. He intends to use that person as a catalyst for transformation, not only in their own life, but in the lives of those around them, and even beyond. The ripple effect of your obedience can ignite change in your community, your family, your workplace, and even on a global scale. The Na'vi were tasked with defending their world, and while their struggles seemed impossible at times, their unity, determination, and purpose brought about a massive change in Pandora. In the same way, the calling God places on your life isn't just about you, it's about the impact that you will have on the world around you. You may not be fighting to save a fictional planet, but you are walking in a divine calling that is just as sacred and significant. Just as the Na'vi fought for something greater than themselves, you too have been chosen by God to fight for the greater good, to be a vessel of change and transformation. One of the most powerful aspects of being chosen by God is that He often uses ordinary people for extraordinary purposes. The Bible is filled with stories of people who were called by God to do great things, often when they least expected it. Take Moses, for example. He was a shepherd living a quiet life in the wilderness when God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. At first, Moses didn't see himself as someone capable of such a monumental task. He was reluctant, doubtful, and even fearful. Yet God's call was clear, and Moses chose to obey. Through his obedience, Moses led the Israelites out of slavery and into freedom, forever changing the trajectory of Israel's history. Similarly, David, a young shepherd boy, was chosen by God to be the king of Israel. At the time, he was just a boy in the fields, tending to sheep. But God saw in David a heart full of faith and courage, and he chose him to lead his people. David's life was filled with resistance and struggle, but his obedience to God's call led to the unification and strength of Israel. His reign changed the nation and solidified his legacy as one of the greatest kings in history. Another powerful example is Esther, a young woman who was called by God to become Queen of Persia. She was chosen to save the Jewish people from annihilation, yet at first she had no idea of the role she would play. She was an ordinary woman in an extraordinary situation. When she learned of the plot to destroy her people, she stepped forward, risking her life to speak on their behalf. Her bravery and obedience to God's calling saved a nation, and her actions have resonated throughout history as an example of courage, faith, and the impact of standing up for what is right. God uses ordinary people for extraordinary purposes, and your life is no exception. Just like Moses, David, and Esther, you have been called for such a time as this. Your purpose is not just about your personal success or happiness, it's about how you will impact the world around you. Whether you're called to lead, teach, heal, build, or serve in another way, your obedience to God's calling will leave a lasting legacy. Reflecting on your calling can bring a deep sense of purpose. Every one of us has the potential to change the world, no matter how small our contribution may seem at first. Your life is part of a larger divine plan. The way you live out your purpose will inspire those around you to do the same. Think about the ripple effect of a single act of kindness, of standing up for what is right, of speaking out for truth. It spreads far beyond what you can see in the moment. When you walk in the purpose God has called you to, you become a part of something much bigger than yourself. You become a vessel through which God can touch the lives of others. The impact of your obedience can inspire those around you to step into their own divine calling. Your courage to live out God's purpose can give others the strength to do the same. Just like the Na'vi who fought together to protect Pandora, we too must unite with others who share the same calling. One person walking in their purpose can lead to a movement of faith, love, and transformation that extends beyond what we can comprehend. Your calling is not just about the here and now, it's about eternity. The choices you make today will have an impact on the generations to come. When you choose to walk in faith and obedience to God's calling, you set in motion a chain of events that can change the course of history. You are not just part of a temporary story. You are part of a divine narrative that stretches beyond this lifetime. Your calling has eternal significance because it is not just about you, it's about fulfilling God's greater plan for the world. Whether you are called to serve in your community, raise a family, or lead others in faith, you are part of God's plan to transform the world. Your obedience to God's call can make an eternal difference not only in your life, but in the lives of countless others. Just as the characters in Avatar were chosen to protect their world, you too have been chosen to protect and care for the world in your own unique way. You may not be fighting to save a fictional planet, but you are fighting to preserve what is sacred, to spread love and truth, and to stand for what is right. Your life, just like the Navi, has the potential to impact generations, and the impact of your obedience can extend far beyond what you can see in this moment. God has chosen you for a purpose that is much greater than what the world can see. Just like the characters in Avatar, who were chosen to fight for something sacred, you too are chosen by God to fulfill a mission that will change the world. Your purpose is far bigger than any earthly success or recognition. It is a divine calling that has the power to impact generations, to transform lives, and to leave a legacy that echoes into eternity. You are not walking alone in this journey. Just like Jake Sully and Neytiri had their tribe, you too are surrounded by God's protection, His guidance, and His purpose. Keep walking in faith, because God is with you every step of the way. Even when the path is uncertain, know that God's hand is guiding you. You are not alone in your calling, and you are not unprotected. The Creator of the universe is walking with you, empowering you to fulfill your divine purpose. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs encouragement. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more motivational content on living out your divine calling. Remember, you were chosen for such a time as this, and your story is just beginning. Step boldly into your purpose, knowing that God has equipped you for this journey. Your life is part of a larger divine plan, and your obedience will change the world in ways you can't yet imagine.